a lot of changes this offseason. What do you think allowed you to still wind up here?
I mean, it starts with the organization and the coaches. I mean, they've set a culture here that, I mean, it was started before I was even here. And so you get a lot of guys in here that learn how we do things. We have a lot of veterans on our team. And when you bring in new guys, you just show them by the way you act. And luckily for us, Brett Veach and Coach Reed brought in a lot of guys that were ready to work and wanted to get out there as quickly as possible. And I think you've seen as the season's gone on, those rookies are getting better. And then the veterans are starting to hit the right moment going into the playoffs.
Patrick, you all seem to have a lot of fun out there today to bring around the Rosie formation. Even Colin Saunders lining up in the backfield. Colin tells me in the locker room if you had thrown it to him, he would have caught it. What's your confidence level that if you do throw it to Saunders, he's able to secure that for a touchdown?
I told Colin, I was like, I'm pretty sure Trav was wide open as my second read, but I was just like, I got to give him a chance. And there was like a linebacker almost stumbled. I don't know if he'd have caught it. He actually has really good hands, but I don't know about his vertical, so I don't know if I'd have been able to throw him a jump ball. Yeah, we work on stuff throughout the entire season, and then try to call it in the right moments. And Coach Reed gives us some freedom to do some of our own flair to it, and so that circle one was one that we had ran some plays like it, and we talked about it on the side, and we were like, hey, let's see if we do this, get some confusion going to throw something back. And all the things, it has to work, and it worked. We just got the holding penalty. So we'll have to get some good stuff going for the playoffs, and whenever we run it has to work.
Patrick, how much was the circle play? First of all, was it snow globe or Arctic Circle? And second, how much did you have to say in how that got designed to begin with?
Yeah, it's a combination. It's like reindeer personnel, Arctic Circle, snow globe. I just call it snow globe's easiest way to. That's why I said it out there. It's the easiest way to say it. It's a long play call, but yeah, it was something we had kind of practiced on actually last year of doing that kind of getting confusion going and getting to the line and snapping it. We didn't get the chance to run it last year. It kind of got thrown, not away, but you kind of, as you season gets started up, you go back to the basics. And as the season went back on, I was like kind of nudging Coach Reed. I was like, hey, let's bring it back in a different way. And we didn't have that throwback on it the last time we ran it. So hopefully we can maybe do it again and get back to whatever we ran last time and get another touchdown.
Patrick, you were pretty critical of your own play last week. Your first pass today obviously goes for 67. Can you walk us through that? It didn't look like Justin was your first read on that play. I wonder if you could walk us through that, and also just hitting a deep ball on your first pass.
Yeah, I mean, I still could have been better, especially in the second half. But, yeah, it was nice to get that going early, especially. And like you said, Justin wasn't the first read, but he was kind of like those alert. He's like an alert where you get your eyes there just to see. And he did a good job on that motion. He didn't get the ball thrown to him all practice, and he was just staying alive. And they played a coverage that they don't play a lot. Where they're playing a little two into the field. He kind of got down that where would be the red line, the sideline, and I was able to get the ball to him and make a play. I was disappointed he didn't score. He's supposed to be like the fastest dude on the field, but he didn't get in there. So I'm sure McCole and Marquez will give him a little crap for that.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to SportsBeat Live. This is our Chiefs post-game show. Chiefs, let's answer Kayla's question right off the bat. We want your questions and comments. And Kayla asks, did the Chiefs win? I fell asleep, so I didn't see the end. So the answer to that question is yes, Kayla, the Chiefs won 31-13, and we're here to talk about it with Herbie Teope, Jesse Newell, and Sam McDowell. Maybe Vahe Gregorian will be with us. Maybe not. You never know with Vahe. But we've got enough here to talk about and with whom to talk about it with. So let's discuss what happened tonight. Chiefs and they get the victory. Played a pretty clean game, and Sam, I want you to kind of put into perspective this regular season, and as the Chiefs go into the playoffs, what finishing 14-3 means to this team, beyond the fact that it's the second best regular season in club history, topped only by the 14-2 record of 2020. So in a year in which each team in the AFC West was supposed to run down the Chiefs, and the Chiefs were going through transition of their own. They win the division going away. They finished 14-3, and they were the number one seed in the AFC playoffs. So how about big picturing it for us?
Yeah, I mean, this offseason was always going to be, I think, pretty educational for this franchise because they took a gamble by extending their championship window. We've had that conversation a lot, but as all of us, I think, probably were asking ourselves, hey, does this team still have enough in the tank to complete a regular season like it just did? The Chiefs had to be asking themselves a different question, which is it worth it? And therefore, I think that would dictate future decisions of the sort. And look, I mean, ultimately, those answers are going to come in the postseason. This team has long past judging its seasons by how they finish in the regular season. But it's a pretty good start to wind up. I mean, Blair, you mentioned it, but they tied a franchise record for wins today. And it's not just the division competition that was supposed to at least close that gap. And obviously there's some talking heads that had them surpass the gap. I think all of us thought the Chiefs would wind up as a division champion. I don't think I know I did not have them going 14-3, and I did not have them as the number one seed in the AFC by year's end.
Hey, Herbie, you're the one who asked the question that gave us the answer back in August in a dorm room at Missouri Western. We'll play a little Jeopardy here. The answer is we're not chopped liver. So the question is, what did Andy Reid think about his team going into this season? I think over the course of 18 weeks, we got an answer to that.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think he said, like he said, chopped liver. You know, we do have Patrick Mahomes, and they're going to be competitive. I think, if anything, what we learned today was what Chris Jones said. I was surprised. You know, it sounded like he kept receipts, but he said there were some talking heads, and he pointed out ESPN and how everybody said they were going to finish last in the division. But, you know, the Chiefs made a statement today, swept the division this year, beat the Broncos twice, obviously, beat the Chargers twice, and now the Raiders. They made a statement. Yes, the AFC West, they did load up on paper. The game is not played on paper. The game is played out there on the field, and the Chiefs, with a 14-3 record, I think they quieted a lot of detractors.
I'm glad to hear that Chris Jones was had been keeping names. That's good. Good to hear. By the way, if that guy, and I wrote this, if that guy's not an All-Pro this year, then they should just blow up the award and not do it. He's had the best season of his career. We'll talk about him in the defense in a little bit. But Jesse, first of all, once again, you're to be commended on finding the best background of everybody. You are the king at backgrounds. That is not that's not a screenshot. That is Jesse. Yeah, Herbie, yours is fine too. But Jesse always finds a way to get the stadium in the background. That's pretty cool. So how about Jesse? We'll talk about Kadarius Toney. I know you wrote about him, but I just wanted okay. And Herbie's switching so we can get a better background. I'm glad to see that. Just some general thoughts on the game, Jesse, and the fact that it was a clean game, right? No turnovers, no big penalties. Got to be what Chiefs fans want to see and what the Chiefs themselves want going into a postseason.
Real quick, Blair, this is a smart move for me to show the background, except for you to know that I'm standing on a chair in an open air press box where if I fall backwards, it might be 40 feet to my death. So if you guys see something happen off of here, just cut the stream real quick, George.
It would be It would be the best ratings we've probably had on this
Yeah,
show.
it'd be the sidebar I'm looking for.
I appreciate that, Sam. I'm glad that this is your entertainment right here. No, I agree with you, Blair. I mean, this is sort of what all of us math nerds have kind of been talking about with the Chiefs, which is if they ever stop shooting themselves in the foot, the things that are usually sustainable week to week that they're really good at, which is pass offense, Patrick Mahomes, getting first downs, those things that are kind of foolproof, that work against good defenses, work against bad defenses. If they do all that and then stop screwing up the special teams plays and the turnovers, you've got yourself a juggernaut. And that's exactly what you saw today with the Chiefs. I mean, Sam talked to it. They added in some explosive plays today, which was a welcome sign. They haven't always had those this season to get those chunk plays. But yeah, you add that on top of a defense that looks to be improving, playing well at the right time, some rookies gaining confidence. Chris Jones on 3rd and 4th downs, again, we'll probably mention him later, but like the guy just has a flair for the moment. I mean, it's unbelievable just to like every crucial moment. It seems like he's coming up with a huge play, but yeah, this is sort of what the Chiefs are. And this is why they have to be considered one of the favorites, especially now that they got the 1 seed in the bye, one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl moving forward. Now, when I say one of the favorites, it means they're probably 20 to 25% to win. You split that amongst, 7 teams on one side and 7 teams on the other. But if I was going to pick a team right now, you said, hey, you get one team to pick to win the Super Bowl. Right now, I would pick the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a really enviable spot to be in.
Kelly comments, amazing young man. She, of course, is talking about Sam McDowell and actually Patrick Mahomes, who we had on just before the show. So it was great to hear Mahomes. And in his post-game press conference,
we've been confused before, though, Blair.
I was going to say in the press conference, I heard Vahe badgering Patrick Mahomes about the snow globe play. So I do want to get that was the most amusing moment of the day. You guys, I don't know if you were watching the ESPN feed in the press box. I was watching the ESPN broadcast, and for some reason the cameras were turned on Steve Levy and Louis Riddick in the press box, and Louis Riddick had to point or grab Steve Levy's arm and start pointing at the at the field. That's what the Chiefs were doing their I think, Herbie, as you called it, ring around the rosy, which was a placeholder until we found out exactly what the play was called. What is it? Just put a big smile on my face. I'm glad it went for a touchdown, even though it was called back on some kind of phantom holding call. But I would probably ask Vahe this because I think he's writing about it. But what does that say, Sam, about the Chiefs rolling that play out when it's still a game, right? I mean, they're not doing this up 35-3. I think it was 14-3 when it happened.
Well, it tells me they either have a variation off of that play they want to show in the playoffs, or they just have enough of these in the Rolodex that it doesn't matter that they just showed one here. But that was a really entertaining play. Oddly, Jesse, Vahe, and I were all looking something else up, so we caught it on the replay rather than live.
So nobody saw it.
It was particularly surprising to us to see it. But I think there's a lot of information off of Kadarius Toney in this game overall. And I think, Jesse, you wrote on him, right? So I'll let you get to it. But I don't remember the last time the Chiefs had a weapon like that develop this late in the year. And the interesting part of that is there might not be a ton of film for opponents that they're going to be facing on Kadarius Toney. But that's a play that I think everybody is probably going to have seen on film by the time the playoffs arrive. So I get back to what I said at the top. It makes me wonder what variation do they have off of that play we just saw in Week 18.
I think here's the fascinating thing about Kadarius Toney. I looked it up. Pro Football Focus keeps the snap counts on these single games, and I was surprised. You want to guess how many snaps Kadarius Toney had in this game? If you were guessing, he had 16. So for him to have 16 snaps, have 3 rushes, 1 touchdown, 2 receptions, 18 yards, including that double juke move, and then another touchdown called back on one of his snaps because of that holding call, which I can tell you from talking to Creed Humphrey in the locker room and showing him the replay, we both had a pretty good laugh about that because, like you said, Blair, probably more phantom than not. They're more like a wrestling takedown. Those guys were really blocking on that play. But yeah, this is it's a crazy development. And Vahe asked Patrick Mahomes about Kadarius after the game, and I thought he gave a really good quote. And I think all these guys are sort of I don't know the word, like astounded by what Kadarius does. The ability to, the old cliche, like you miss in a phone booth. I mean, the jukes he makes, the horizontal ability, the things that would probably blow out my calves, my hamstrings, and everybody's on this call, the things that he does. It's pretty amazing. And not only that, he ran through a couple tackles. He made the one guy miss on the play after the ring around the rosy play to get that touchdown, because there is an unblocked player, and he basically outran him to the sideline. So he has an amazing skill set, and the Chiefs still are only using him on about a fourth of the plays, but maybe that's enough. They just need to have him enough in the playbook to give other teams something to think about, and again, for him to display and flash that ability that we know he has now. So I asked him in the locker room, I said, Kadarius, what can teams, or what can people, fans, expect from you in the playoffs? And he kind of laughed and he said, something like today. And so I think something like today is something that Chiefs fans, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, they'd all sign up for that.
Hey, Jesse, just because I think it is an important indication, and I know when you've gone through Toney today, you've probably already looked this up, but 16 snaps today, how does that compare to what he's been seeing recently? Because the reason I bring this up is Andy Reid had mentioned, and Herbie, it might have been your question on Friday or Thursday, but McCole Hardman's been out for a while. And so whenever he does return, you're not going to see him just suddenly getting 35 snaps in a game. And he specifically mentioned Kadarius Toney's workload as sort of the blueprint for whenever we do see McCole Hardman return. We obviously didn't see him today. He warmed up. We didn't see him in the game. That might be a good idea or an indicator for what you will see from McCole Hardman. So that's why I'm asking Jesse just how his snap count has kind of grown maybe over the past month or so.
Well, yeah, and he was out a couple of weeks, remember? They sat him again. It was sort of – Sorry, Herbie. Yeah, it was sort of interesting. He had that hamstring injury. It's kind of grown over the weeks. I think he had 6 snaps last week. We can get to Herbie here in a second, but just kind of ramping up a little bit. And you heard Mahomes talk about it afterwards, saying that he's learning the playbook. He kind of came in mid-season. It seems like they have him in now for some of those gadget-type plays or some of those plays, but when he's in, they're utilizing him. I mean, they're utilizing him on basically 30 to 40% of the plays when he's out there. So it does give teams something to think about. You mentioned it, Sam, and maybe this is part of what we talk about too with this team and what they did in the offseason is that it used to be, okay, if Kelsey is out there and Tyreek's out there, you feel good. If one of those guys goes down, you start to kind of wonder what happens. The Chiefs basically had 4 receivers out there today. They didn't have McCole. They didn't have Sky Moore. Smith-Marset played 2 snaps in non-garbage time for the Chiefs. And what do? They rolled out 3 tight ends a bunch. So I know something that brings a smile to Herbie Teope's face anytime you can get that 13 personnel out there. But this team's versatile, man. I mean, they can put Toney out there and then they can sub him out and put Blake Bell in. They can go under center and go play action there, or they can go back to shotgun. So all these things that they do and put on tape, it might make them a little bit more, I don't know if I want to say bulletproof, but it makes them maybe tougher to prepare for this year than they were in years past, just because they have those weapons and now you have to prepare for a whole lot. And right now that includes Kadarius Toney.
Hey, Herbie, all of a sudden, running back seems, a concern for most of the year. Nobody seems to be taking the lead. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's not living up to expectations. And all of a sudden now running back seems to be a strength on this team. Maybe it's quality of opposition has something to do with it, but today was pretty amazing, wasn't it? With not only with Toney, but Ronald Jones, Jesse's guy, Ronald Rojo getting his touches and getting into the end zone, and of course, Jerick McKinnon. What can you say about him? The guy's unbelievable with 9 touchdown receptions and at least 1 in 6 straight games. You put him behind that offensive line, especially the middle of it, you've got a pretty good running game going.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And you talk about the touchdowns today. I mean, all 3 running backs scored. Kadarius Toney scored. So Kelsey hasn't scored a touchdown since week 12. Okay, that's out of the way. But the Chiefs are still putting up points, and that's what's impressive about it. Jesse talked about their versatility as opponents. When you get into the postseason, and when running backs are scoring in a single game, you've got a lot to talk about and a lot of things to think.
Okay, having a little trouble with Herbie's audio. We've got a bunch of comments here. I want to get to a few of them, and that'll cover a lot of the topics that I've still have listed here. Evie says this is how they need to perform in the playoffs. Totally agree. When playoff time comes around, I don't think we're going to be seeing anybody's second quarterback, which is or Russell Wilson, either one. So that's going to be one difference that the Chiefs are going to see in the postseason. They're going to get somebody starting quarterback, and that hasn't always been the case this year.
Maybe. We're seeing the Titans are beating the Jaguars right now.
With Josh Dobbs.
Get in the post, yeah, with Josh Dobbs. So it's possible that they could beat somebody like the Ravens, for example, in the first round. But listen, that is one of the major benefits of being the number one seed is all weirdness in that first round favors you. All those upsets make you have an easier path to the Super Bowl. It does not guarantee that the number 2 seed is going to have an easier path to the Super Bowl. I mean, the Chiefs, by getting the number 1 seed, we had this discussion on Thursday. I'm trying to remember, Blair, the timing of whether or not we discussed how the Chiefs arrived at the number 1 seed on Thursday's call or not, or whether we just proposed ideas, I think. But I know there's a lot of people in Kansas City that had thought that, hey, just because you don't necessarily get the home field advantage in the AFC Championship if you play the Bills, provided the Bills beat the Patriots tomorrow, that the number 1 seed isn't all it's cracked up to be. But you just won 2 games today. You beat the Raiders, but you won a first-round playoff game today too. And there's nothing more valuable about getting the number 1 seed that they secured today than that.
Absolutely. Evie once again noticed that special teams were back. Absolutely, they were. No fumble on punt returns, no muff punts. Harrison Butker made all of his extra points and the 1 field goal. So, and I thought if there was a special teams player of the game, it's Tommy Townsend. 2 punts inside the 5, great coverage. I forgot who was it who caught? Was it Chris Lamons that caught the punt early, and then they downed another one inside the 5. So really good stuff there.
I actually sorry to cut in, Blair. I just had a little bit of a funny story. I talked to Tommy Townsend after the game, and I asked him about that second punt that you referenced that kind of landed like around the 5 and just popped back. And he said you really don't have any control over the bounce of a punt. So he said the entire time that ball was in the air, he thought he could kick it with as much force as he had because he had 65 yards to the goal line, and realized he kicked it so good that the entire time in the air he's like, oh no, and said that he's just saying out loud to himself, please catch it. He wants the return guy to catch it. So he's just saying, please catch it. When he sees that he moves out of the way, he's thinking, well, crap, this is going to be a touchback. And he says it's like one of the greatest moments you can have as a punter when you see that ball bounce right back towards you on the 5-yard line there.
I bet. Our buddy Jack wants to know how Frank Clark is doing. If Herbie rejoins us, we'll get that to Herbie, since he is the injury editor on this panel.
The only thing I'll mention with that, Blair, is he was in the locker room with the team after the game. So
that's a good sign.
That's not a definitive thing to tell you, but that is a thing to tell you that he was not taken away to some medical facility. So I would think a precautionary thing, but Herbie would have the update on that, since Andy Reid usually starts his press conference with those injuries.
Andrew asks, how does the ref call holding on the ring around the rosy play? He demands an explanation. I want the explanation on the pass interference that wasn't called on MVS. I'm not sure how more obvious that can be. There's always missed calls in every game, but that one seemed obvious to me.
Yeah, and I think it favors the Chiefs, though, look, that play is isolated, but it favors the Chiefs when a game is more loosely called, because their cornerbacks play really physical. I think it would have been a bad flag, but not the worst penalty we had seen in the world if a flag's thrown on 4th down in the end zone, on the interception from Juan Thornhill. And Jesse, I don't know if you've looked up EPA yet, but those had to be 2 of the most impactful plays of the game that, the refs chose to let them play today. I think that favored the Chiefs overall, even if not on that specific call.
Definitely would favor them in the playoffs. We've seen this with the Chiefs. You see it sometimes in the playoffs. You dare the officials to make a call, and a lot of times in the playoffs they don't want to. And I think that's part of the reason the Steve Spagnuolo's defenses sometimes tend to have that uptick toward the end of the season. And you saw today, man, Chiefs cornerbacks were physical. You saw Jalen Watson, especially on the outside there. They were jamming those guys and daring them to get off the line of scrimmage. So that could be something that maybe kind of plays to the Chiefs' favor here moving forward if the refs swallow their whistles a little bit. And like I said, human nature is that those officials do not want to be the big part of the game, the big narrative or the storyline in these playoff games. So if that continues on, I'd expect the Chiefs to continue their physical play.
Hey, Herbie, is there an injury update on Frank Clark?
The only thing that Andy Reid said after the game was Frank change. Point out this gives him the extra time to get healthy. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with him on the other end at Wild Card Weekend.
Okay. All right. So Andy asked a good question. Where does Hardman fit in with Toney? Looking like he's taking that role. You guys touched on it a little while ago in terms of maybe the way they would bring McCole back. But once he is back, and then let's say they win a playoff game, they're playing in the AFC Championship, and McCole's got his legs under him and everything. How do you use both of those guys? And it's the eternal question, right? Ever since the Chiefs got Toney, it's what wide receiver is going to lose repetitions, and we still don't know the answer to that question.
I think honestly, McCole's I hate to say this. I think McCole's a more complete player than Kadarius is right now because Kadarius came in midseason. So again, it seems like the Chiefs have like a subset of the playbook for Kadarius. Like, you learn these certain plays, we will run these over and over, and when you're in, you're probably going to get the football. That's what we saw today out there. And even Patrick Mahomes kind of commenting that, like, okay, now he's even involved in some plays where he's not the main guy and still blocking and doing those things. So they're still implementing him in. Again, he missed some time with the injury that they said with the hamstring. I talked to Kadarius in the locker room. He didn't make it sound like he was very hurt over that time. Maybe it was kind of a Chiefs ramp-up period. There was some talk on the ESPN broadcast about potentially getting his lower body strengthened and getting his wind more. So kind of interesting to hear that play out. But to me, McCole Hardman, he's been a guy that's run the whole offense. You know what I mean? Like, he runs different routes for them. He obviously has had those pop passes that has been successful with, the same thing that some of those jet sweeps that Kadarius Toney has run too. But it just seems to me like McCole Hardman, when he gets back, can do more of the playbook, do more for the Chiefs when he's out there. The question, though, is how Andy Reid always treats these things, which is usually those guys that are injured get ramped up. And that was why potentially this game could have been important for McCole, just to get out there 5 snaps or 10 snaps and to kind of get your legs under you and get the coach's faith back in you. So right now, I think it's between those two guys. I mean, they play different roles on the Chiefs offense, but it kind of goes back to the versatility we talk about. Like, when the Chiefs only had 4 receivers that they were comfortable with today, they put more tight ends on the field. When they have Kadarius Toney available, they up his snaps, and McCole Hardman and Sky Moore aren't in there. So I just think right now they're in a really enviable position. They take the pieces they have, they kind of knead it all together into a big dough, and they throw it out there, and usually the pizza's pretty good. So that's probably what you're looking at with McCole Hardman. He probably can do more of the offense than what Kadarius does, but Andy Reid's just going to take what he has and use the ingredients, and so far so good with that recipe so far this season.
And they didn't have a giveaway, which is huge. They didn't have a Carl Cheffers 10 penalties, which is huge. So it was just an all-around well-played game by the Chiefs. I think if there was a key play, it was the 4th and 2 that the Raiders had at the. Was it 4th and goal? I think it was 4th and goal at the 2, right, in the second quarter, early in the second quarter. And Jarrett Stidham threw the incomplete pass because Chris Jones had shed his block and forced Stidham into the bad throw. And I forgot who the defender was on the play in the end zone, but also made a good play. That was
Jalen Watson. That was the play that Sam was talking about. Maybe on another day it's pass interference, but I think because the previous one was not, that one couldn't be. So,
gotcha.
Again, very physical coverage from him, but in the end, he made the play.
Yep. And so that leads me into the Chris Jones. Let's get to him. He was my KC star of the game, and we were all looking at what Patrick Mahomes had to do to reach statistical milestones, what Travis Kelce had to do. And it turns out the guy who reached a pretty important milestone was Chris Jones with 2.5 sacks, got him up to 15.5, which matches a career best. That was in 20, I forgot what year it was, 2018 maybe. But he set an NFL record with that year with at least 1 sack in 11 straight games. I think he's I think he's as good as it gets at defensive tackle right now. And with him in the middle, or when they line him up outside, to me, it gives me hope that this defense can be good enough to help them win playoff games. And I haven't always felt that way about this team this season. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think those were my biggest questions even going into the season, was whether or not this defensive line could make big plays. And look, maybe this is a little bit unfair, but I still have questions going into the postseason because the history has not been great. And I even asked Chris Jones about that, and he seems to take personal responsibility for the way last year ended because he thought he could have made a couple of plays on Joe Burrow. I think he's less willing to accept that his overall playoff record is really bad beyond that game. He's played 12. He's played 12 career playoff games. He's never had a sack in the postseason. I don't know that the Chiefs can win a Super Bowl if Chris Jones goes 4 straight games without a sack against really good competition. So yeah, I still, like I said, maybe it's a little bit unfair, but I'm still in the prove it phase with the defensive line. I think they've got to do it against the teams that they haven't done it against historically, and the Bengals being top that list.
Okay, hey, let's wrap it up here. I know you guys still have work to do. So, Chiefs win. They're the number 1 seed. If the Buffalo Bills beat the New England Patriots next week, then tomorrow, they'll be the 2 seed, and then there's a possibility of the Chiefs and Bills winning their divisional round games and playing a AFC championship game at a neutral site that we pretty much are sure now that it won't be Indianapolis, won't be Detroit. Could be, and of course, this was part of the broadcast today. Mark Davis has invited the AFC championship game to be played in Las Vegas. And if that's the case, I think you guys just stay out there, maybe cover the divisional round game from there and do the advance work, as we used to call it. As it is, you're not coming back till Wednesday this week anyway, I believe. So good on you.
Well, Herbie, with the bye, Herbie has extended his stay until the following Saturday. Now he'll be back at Arrowhead on the following Sunday.
Okay, and probably come in behind the traffic that day as well. So, all right, you guys, get back to it. Great conversation, great questions and comments. Thank you so much, everybody. Join us again on Thursday when we talk about the bye week, and we'll have the full playoff bracket available in both the AFC and the NFC. We'll have plenty to discuss and plenty to gripe about and fret about and be excited about with this Chiefs team. Okay, for Sam, Jesse, Herbie, and Vahe, who's probably still badgering Chiefs and coaches in interviews, for George Howard, who does a great job getting Herbie's mic fixed and computer fixed on a regular basis. Good night, everybody. We'll talk to you again on Thursday.